we're going to talk about our last absolute monarch that the people down in Richmond, Virginia want you to know for the SOL. It is going to be Peter the Great. But the first thing we need to do is we need to set the stage and tell you a little bit of background on how he comes to power. So we're going to have Ivan III. He's going to do three things to increase Russia's power. He's going to conquer territory around Moscow. He's going to liberate Russia from Mongol rule, and he's going to centralize the Russian government. He is known as the first Tsar. Ivan the Terrible, that was his nickname. He is going to come to power in 1533. Ivan spent his childhood fighting off the boyars, which were land-owning nobles that were attempting to take his power. At the age of 16, he seized all power and became the first Tsar of Russia. Tsar, spelled C-Z-A-R, also spelled T-S-A-R. It means Caesar in Russian. Rule by terror. So we're going to have Ivan go through a bad period, and it's going to begin after the death of his wife. He had loved her so very much. When she died, he went through a crazy period. Ivan formed his own police force, whose chief duty was to hunt down and to murder people that Ivan considered to be a traitor. Ivan is going to have thousands of people killed. And even his own first son is going to be killed in a heated argument that they have. So, after Ivan's death, his weak son is going to come to power and unfortunately will die soon after. Russia is going to go through a period of turmoil in which the boyars fought for power. In 1613, Michael Romanov was chosen as the next Tsar, and it's going to begin the 300-year Romanov dynasty. So the Romanov family, is going to rule Russia for 300 years. Peter the Great comes to power. In 1696, Peter became Tsar and established his absolute power. He is known as Peter the Great because he was one of Russia's greatest reformers. All right, so Russia's contrast with Europe. Russia is much different than Western Europe. Western Europe is that side of Europe where France and Spain and Portugal all are. So in Russia, serfdom lasted into the mid-1800s. Russia had come into little contact with Western Europe and knew little of the cultural differences. And Russians are Orthodox Christians. Peter decides to go visit Western Europe. He is going to be fascinated by the modern machines that he sees when he's in the German quarter of Moscow. Moscow is a city in Russia, and there's a part of Moscow that was run by Germans and had German things and modern machines. So in 1697, at the age of 24, Peter is going to go on a one-year tour of Western Europe. He wanted to learn the West's culture and their manufacturing techniques. He was very interested and very curious and wanted to know more. Peter rules absolutely. Peter decided that Russia was going to compete with Europe on both military and commercial terms. Peter's goal was the westernization, or the use of Western Europe as a model, to change Russia into a world power, going to make it more modern, more like Western Europe. It's a big feat. I can't even believe He's going to do this because Russia is ginormous. We know Russia spans over the Asian continent, and it does get into the eastern part of Europe. It is huge. So he's going to take this ginormous country and change it, and he's going to succeed. His reforms, his changes. So Russian Orthodox Church is going to be under state control. He's going to reduce the power of the boyars, which are those land-owning nobles. He's going to recruit men from low-ranking families and give them government jobs. He's going to have European officers brought into Russia to help modernize the army. And of course, to pay for these changes, what is he going to do? He's going to increase taxes. So westernization, what does it mean? What are some things that Peter's going to have done to Russia? Well, a big fun one is he's going to introduce potatoes to the diet. So during that whole Columbian exchange period, potatoes that originated here in the Americas were brought over to Europe. European people loved potatoes. I love potatoes. You probably love a potato product. French fries, mashed potatoes. All right, delicious. So when Peter goes on his one-year tour of Western Europe, he has a potato, loves the potato, and wants to grow potatoes over in Russia and introduce them to the people of Russia and incorporate it into the diet. He's going to start a Russian newspaper. So how else to get information out there to all corners of your country? Well, start a newspaper. Bring in a printing press. Write down the happenings, what's going on, and distribute it out there so everybody knows what's happening. He's going to raise the women's status. He's going to have them attend social events. He's going to have nobles wear Western fashions. I'm not talking about the cowboy hat and boots and chaps, but we are talking about clothing that is more similar to the clothing that the people of France were wearing at this time in the late 1600s. He's also going to open a school of navigation and the arts and sciences. He wants to get out there and start exploring the world, just like Portugal and Spain and Great Britain, just like what they're doing. He wants to get out there and maybe stake claim in land, go get some goods from other countries. Just get out there. Let's get some sailors out there on some boats. Fantastic. All right, he's going to establish St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is named after him. Petersburg. Peter felt education was the key to Russia's success. Just like with the key to anybody's success, you need to be educated. He's going to establish a new capital on the Baltic Sea. Nobles are going to be forced to leave Moscow, and they are going to go live in this new port city of St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg is built on the model of Western cities Peter had seen. It's going to look a lot like some places we've already looked at, such as, look at this. Here's a fountain at St. Petersburg. Looks very familiar to fountains seen at Louis XIV's Palace of Versailles. It's because when he went there, he thought it was grand, wonderful, and wanted some of his own. So we need to know Peter the Great's symbol of power, and that is westernization. And that westernization showed the absolute power of Peter because he forced an entire nation to change its culture. Some things that he did, like we said, introduced potatoes to the diet, started a newspaper, upped women's statuses, opened up schools of navigation. He even had nobles shave their beards. If the noble wanted to keep their beard, they were taxed. So it's either you pay a price or you shave it off. All right, he's forcing people to change, and he was able to do this because he is considered an absolute monarch, and he had the right to rule absolutely because of that divine right where God granted them the power to rule absolutely. All right, so that is the end of our absolute monarchs. We talked about Louis XIV and Peter the Great and their symbols of power. For Louis XIV, it was the Palace of Versailles. For Peter the Great, it's right here on the screen, his symbol of power was westernization. Louis XIV is going to rule France, and Peter the Great is going to rule Russia. The state of the empire after the monarch's reign, Louis XIV, when he dies, what is the state of France? It is bankrupt. It has no money. And Peter the Great, after he dies and goes away, what is Russia's state at this time period? Well, it's more modern. It is much more like Western Europe. It is going to be extremely successful and get Russia well on its way to becoming a super world power. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are done with Standard 6B. You will be quizzed on this next class. See y'all on the flip side.